Greetings and welcome back. We are in Senior AP English, and we will now finish our observations with Coleridge's classic Rime of the Ancient Mariner. I'm with you on page 818, and we're going to begin by, first of all, pointing out that, to continue what we were saying yesterday, that this poem is designed to teach you something about romanticism. Now, I got to say this out loud. Coleridge didn't use the term romanticism in the way we use it after Coleridge. It's not like Coleridge or Wordsworth said, we are romantics, we're going to write, the world is too much for us late and soon, or, Rime of the Ancient Mariner, or Tintern Abbey, because we are romantics and we are going to make this presentation of the ideas of romanticism. No, no, no. The idea of calling something romanticism, a philosophy, a view, a worldview, or whatever, happens after the fact, okay? So, I mean, people will look at the poetry of lyrical ballads. People will look at Rime of the Ancient Mariner and then ascribe a title of romanticism to it. Or, in the case of Emersonian ideology, transcendentalism, or for Emerson, he liked the idealism as the word better, right? So I mean, this is kind of, this is kind of the way this all happens, all right? But having said that, we can still play this game as academics of saying, okay, so Rime of the Ancient Mariner is a work of romanticism, right? So why is it a work of romanticism? Like, what specifically constitutes it as a work of romanticism? And we'll go to the end of the poem to kind of recognize this. We were there already in a previous lecture. Farewell, farewell, but this I tell to thee, thou wedding guest. I mean, Coleridge could have easily said, this I tell to thee, thou reader, right? I mean, at this point, it's fairly obvious that what he's doing is trying to elicit at least an intellectual response from the reader. You begin to kind of take on the persona of the young man sitting there, in our word picture, outside of Warped Tour, listening to what this old guy has to say. First of all, there's the story. Then there's the implication of the story, as we were saying yesterday. The albatross around the neck is placed there, in some way self-chosen, by virtue of the fact that the old man decided to shoot the albatross with his crossbow. But it's put there by others who want to punish him, right? Show guilt, assign guilt for what it is he's done. The albatross then will fall in part 4 when he's ready to accept the beauty of nature, the power of nature, the primacy of nature, a number of ways we could say that. And now to the end of this thing. He prayeth well who loveth well, both man and bird and beast. He prayeth best who loveth best all things, both great and small. For the dear God who loveth us, he made and loveth all. What is romantic about this idea? Jot it down in your notes. I mean, what you just read, why is that romantic ideology? Okay, what are your thoughts? Why? What is it that is romantic about this idea?
It wants them to take this story on, like, for more people to read, like, for the future, kind of.
Very much, Coleridge is very much concerned about making some points for the future, no doubt. Keep going. What is it that makes this idea romantic? He prayeth well who loveth well, both man and bird and beast. He prayeth best who loveth best all things, both great and small. Why is that a romantic idea?
Because of the love for everything.
Love for all things. The equality of all things as being sacred to the God or the deity that created it. Okay? And in so doing, all life form is precious. All life form. Now, what's radically significant about this? Why would the guy kill the albatross? Ninth grader once said it out loud. Because he could. Right. But I don't understand. What's the point? Because he could. Why could he kill the albatross and the albatross not kill him?
Because he had a crossbow.
He is human. He has technology. He has the ability to see something weaker and jack it. He can do that by virtue of his being human. Understand, the underlying premise here is quite a radical premise. It says what about humans and other life forms? Think, what does it say? I'm challenging you now here at 3A to begin to think here as well about Milton's Paradise Lost. In typical Christian theology, go back to Miltonic Christian theology, the Eden story, the Eden myth, humans are placed within the garden and given preeminence over the other animals. Remember, the most obvious recognition of this is name them. Genesis chapter 2. Name them. You have power. That word in the 1611 King James Version is dominion over the other animals. Humans, every other life form. Humans run the show. Not great white sharks, not tigers, not name the life form. Humans, and then everything else. In other words, the old man kills an albatross, and the response is, big deal, it's an albatross. It's not like killing a man, it's just an albatross. The point here in the poem, though, is not so. I want to point out, this is a radical philosophic view. It says, albatross, man, equal. Why, though? This is where Coleridge is able to sidestep the accusation that he is a non-believer, a Christian non-believer. Why? What's his argument?
Yes,
everything's created. All life form is created, and therefore all life form is equal. This is a radical idea. Think about it in 3a. We've already mentioned Milton. Now I'll mention Jefferson. Think about Tommy and his pals. We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men are created equal, a concept he himself did not even believe. And for those of you that watched Steve Spielberg's film Lincoln, you kind of understand just a few years later, right? 7 years ago, remember, it will be Lincoln's kind of fancy poetic word math. He likes to say it that way. But 100 years later, we're still playing the game of equality. But it will be into the 20th century that people will come back to this point and point out, if you want to, you could argue all life forms created equal. Right? That's what's being said here. And in that moment, this is a challenging idea. What makes you think humans run this planet? What, because you got language? Other life forms have language. Because you can make fire? Because you have the capacity of thought? Because you could do things with your thumb that a monkey can't do? All of the arguments of the scientific enlightenment are already beginning to be engineered. What is it that makes humans so particularly special? Remember Pope's essay on man. Presume not God to scan the proper study of mankind as man. Who is man and what is man? Remember Hamlet says it in that famous speech, man delights not me. He says, what a piece of work is a man. I mean, in the end, what is he? Quintessence of dust. We were talking just a few seconds ago about Tolstoy's Death of Ivan Ilyich. When we read that novel, we are reminded again, humans and trees, they have one thing in common. They both go away. They don't last forever. Just like albatrosses. They get jacked by crossbows. The mariner, whose eye is bright now. Notice, light. Everything Platonist right here. If you know your Plato, you understand Coleridge is playing Platonist games with us. The mariner, the old man, the teacher, the Socrates character. See, that's where we are, aren't we? The old Socratic who has come down into the Piraeus, opening lines of Republic, remember. Gone down into the cave to find the young kid to say, you need to hear this story. And the kid says, leave me alone. I want to be chained up and go back to look at shadows on a wall. And the Socratic character says, no, you need to hear this story. Let me show you the light. Whose eye is bright, whose beard with age is hoar. This is a way for us to say, for Coleridge to say, really old man. His life has aged him. He's not young, he's old. Is gone. Boom. It's like leaving the kid almost to wonder, was this real? Was this not real? And now the wedding guest, the kid, turned from the bridegroom's door. Means what?
He's leaving.
He doesn't go to the party. He doesn't go to Warped Tour. The minute the guy on the street tells you the story, the next band's getting ready for Warped Tour, and you just walk away. Walk away, why? Why does he leave the party? What about the story and the telling of the story? We would argue those are two different elements, right? There's this whacked out story about how I killed this bird and all these strange things happened and bodies came back to life to animate, to bring the ship back to harbor, etc., etc. But then there's this telling of the story. The old man who's able to kind of capture him. But when he leaves, the kid leaves. He doesn't go to the party. He walks back home. He went like one that hath been stunned. Now that's an interesting word. Stunned. What is a stun gun? It doesn't kill you.
Freezes you.
It does. It just kind of freezes you, right? What does the word stunned here mean to you, do you think? He goes like one who hath been stunned.
Trance.
Almost like a trance. That's an interesting way to say it. It's as if this story and the telling of this story by this old man has left this kid stoned, drug-induced, trance-like, and is of sense forlorn. Those of us who know our Plato know we always write next to that first box, of or related to the five. You just read the word, right? I'm teaching you how to read, aren't I, on multiple levels. Once you've read Plato's Republic, once you understand the theory of the forms, you can come to a poem like this and say, oh, the kid was ready to go into the party. Yay! The first box. Yay! Sports Illustrated swimsuit models. Victoria's Secret models. Yay! Getting stoned and drunk and having lots of fun partying. Yay! First box. Overrelated to the five senses. Anything I can do that I can have experiences in the five senses, that's what I want to do. The old man tells him a story, and now he walks away. As if he doesn't care about the five senses anymore. It's as if he doesn't even have them anymore. Of sense forlorn. A sadder and a wiser man. He rose the morrow morning. What? Put it in your own words. What's he just said? At the next morning, what? He gets up two things. Two things are fundamentally different about his life by the next morning. What are they?
He's sadder.
He is sadder. Keep going. He's wiser. What's the contiguity between the two? I don't get it.
He has more knowledge, so it's...
He's obviously got more knowledge. He's wiser. Really? From this goofy story? From a whacked out story about shooting some bird in the middle of the South Pacific and going through the doldrums? This story led him to be wiser? That's an interesting question. Why sadder? Shouldn't we, when we get wiser, go, yay, I'm smarter than everyone. Yay, I'm smarter than I was before. Yay, I learned something. Why sadder? And what does Wordsworth have to say about this in Tintern Abbey that can finally explain it for us? By the way, they were pals. By the way, those two texts set in the same lyrical ballads. Yeah. Of course, you've already turned to 787, haven't you? Because you're aware that's where we've got to go, huh? 787 takes us to what text? Tintern Abbey, and more particularly, Old Fart Wordsworth. Not young, old. He was writing about when he was young, and he says those days are past and all its dizzying raptures. Remember, he says, I'm glad I don't have to be young anymore, Old Fart Wordsworth says. Being young is fatiguing. You never have any time. You're running, as a thoughtless youth, as a roe, as a small deer, bounding over the mountains, running. He says all of that is past, line 83 or so, and all its aching joys are now no more, and all its dizzy raptures, that's called being young. We'll think of Dorothy here in a few minutes, won't we, in this poem? He says, nor for this faint eye, nor more, nor murmur. I don't want to go back. Other gifts have followed. For such loss, I would believe abundant recompense. I have lost, he says. I've lost a number of things growing old, but I've gained something in the loss. A recompense. Abundant recompense. Really? What is it that you've learned now that you've gotten old? For I have learned. Now this is interesting. Just a few days away from graduating and finally leaving high school. That thing we've been working on for so long. It's a fair question for the lunatic teacher to ask. Have you learned anything in the 4 years of high school? See, our inclination is to say, well, of course, dude, I've been taking upper level classes all the time. I mean, I can now do mathematics I couldn't do when I was a freshman. I can do blah, blah, blah. I couldn't do when I was a freshman. No, you didn't hear my question. I didn't ask what you studied. I asked what you've learned. You're only a few days left. What have you learned? Well, here it is. This is for Wordsworth, what he's learned. It's probably not a bad activity for you to think the same. What have I learned in the 4 years of high school, in the nearly 2 decades of my first 2 decades of my life? What have I learned? He says, I've learned to look on nature not as in the hour of thoughtless youth. Stupid freshmen. They think not at all, right? Thoughtless youth. But hearing oftentimes the still, and there it is, sad music of humanity, nor harsh nor grating, though of ample power to chasten and subdue. And I have felt a presence that disturbs me with the joy of elevated thoughts, a sense sublime. The kid wakes up in the morning, sadder and wiser. Wiser we can gesture at. He's learned something. The story of the old mariner has somehow helped to drag him a little bit further out of the cave, back to Plato's Book 7 of Republic. But what about sadder? Why sadder? I don't understand. Why? Somebody want to help me out here? Why sadder? Why is he sadder than he was before? If he learned something, why wouldn't he be happier?
Because some people will never get support in life, but know that.
Maybe he's sad because he realizes all of the people who will never understand what he understands. So he's sad for other people, maybe.
Maybe he's sad because he understands himself now.
Ooh. Why would that make him sad, hearing this story?
Maybe he regrets what he's done with his life.
Ah, now we're getting closer to maybe what Coleridge wants us to understand. There is a certain understanding of regret that can happen the minute that we start to learn certain things. See how that works? So we find ourselves saying, I once was this, now I'm this. Keep going. Now we're starting to think. Metaphorically speaking, maybe he realizes he has shot his albatross. What? See the beauty of a piece of literature. You don't get it until you get it. What? What do you mean, shot your albatross? It's like, dude, I've never even been on a boat, and I never even shot a crossbow. No, we're talking metaphor. Now we're at 3B in your notes, aren't we? To what degree can you posit at least one moment in your life when you shot your albatross? What do I mean by that, by the way? What does that mean when you shot your albatross?
Taking away something that was like good.
You didn't understand the relationship between yourself and the rest of the world. Right? A thoughtless act. Wordsworth calls it thoughtless youth. A thoughtless act. Is it a thoughtless act to shoot an albatross out of the sky just because you can? Oh yeah, sure. For Coleridge it is anyway, right? And at the moment that one comes to realize you shot your albatross, you brought on your own pain. And you had to then live with the ramifications of that pain. It might have been something you did. It might have been something you said. Remember, Wordsworth said, you can define your life as little nameless, unremembered acts of kindness and of love. Shooting an albatross is what? The opposite of that, isn't it? Yeah, it's the opposite of that, right? There isn't anything kind, isn't anything gentle about taking the albatross's life simply because you can, because you have the technology to do so. Now, we're not making at least now, statements against hunting, although this poem has been used in this regards, right? Vegetarians will often come back to a poem like this and say, really? Just because you could kill an animal to eat it, does that mean that you should? Peter Singer, the great Peter Singer, will ask this question ethically, and it's a very frustrating question for those of us that like our Big Macs, because obviously you got to deal, I mean, on some intellectual level, you have to deal with that. Just because you can kill something to eat it, does that mean you should? Or do you have a moral obligation to see all life forms as equal? And in that moment realize that you have no necessarily moral exemplar or allowance to take other life just because you can. To what degree does gaining knowledge make us sadder? Now we're back to Blake in his Songs of Innocence, Songs of Experience, huh? Right? When you're innocent, la-ti-da, life is great, right? Everything is all right. Think of the life of the Buddha. That great story comes to mind, doesn't it? He grows up a child living behind walls where life is great. Everything is awesome, dude. Then he sneaks out. He sees a sick person. He sees a poor person. He sees a homeless person on the streets of Denver. For the first time goes, whoa, whoa, whoa. Maybe it's a trip to Tijuana for the first time. Whoa, whoa, what is this about? What? They're actually kids who weren't born like me and given everything in their life? And in that moment, why sad? Why sad?
Pities them.
Yeah, we've crossed it, haven't we? We've said it out loud. One obviously has to do with other people. Not everybody gets to live the life that you got to live. Not everybody gets it like you got it. And, as was pointed out, there's an internal kind of viewing as well. Crap, what have I been doing? It's like one senior once said after she finally figured out this poem, what have I been doing for 18 years? Alone, alone on a wide, wide sea. Right? At what point do we identify when we are wiser? When you know. When you know you finally have figured it out. The old man is gone. He goes back to his room alone. The next morning he's got no interest in being happy. Now see, we'll have to balance this view with, my heart leaps up when I behold a rainbow in the sky. Wordsworth published it in the same volume of Lyrical Ballads. See, notice how the romantic view, it tries to hold both extremes of a position. On the one hand, you see the pain of the world, and it makes you sad. The pain you have inflicted, the pain others have inflicted. It makes you sad. But on the other hand, you see the beauty of a rainbow, and it makes you happy. How do you live with both in a world of one lifetime? How do you live with both? How can you unite both of them? And for romantics, the answer, of course, is easy. This sea that bears her bosom to the moon, the winds that will be howling at all hours and are gathered now like sleeping flowers. For this, for everything we're out of tune. It moves us not. Nature. Nature is the answer. As long as you can remain close to the energy of nature, the romantics say, you can gain both that sublimity as well as the perplexity or the sadness or the disturbing elevated thinking that is an inherent part of what it means to be alive. Or as Tolstoy will remind us in The Death of Ivan Ilyich, you're alive until you're not. What does that mean? Well, there you go. Rime of the Ancient Mariner. Observation.